Hi guys, so today I want to talk to you about what people mean by babies are expensive. So these are some things that I wish I had known before I had Grace that I didn't know to ask about, and I think that's why no one really told me. So let's talk birth plan first. It's good to have a birth plan. It's good to have contingency birth plans. Now, when I went in and had this conversation with my OBGYN, I said, women have been having babies for literally centuries. There's kind of just a way it goes, yeah? And then it either gets complicated or it doesn't, and everything happens from there, right? And she's like, yeah. So my personal choice, I didn't go to any birthing classes. I didn't do any Lamaze training or anything like that. I just kind of went in going, it's a natural thing. It's going to happen. It's going to be painful. And just see how it goes. And what I told her is I want to try for natural birth. And if that doesn't work, or my baby was breech and she was premature, so there were other issues. I had some complications during pregnancy that were not, one of them was pretty normal and one of them was not normal, and that led to a lot of the issues. So I wanted to try for natural. And then if, the pain was too much, go for some anesthetic. But at any time, if there was danger to myself or to Grace, then I was fine with a C-section. We had talked ahead of time, and I'd actually gone in on the Wednesday. I was already dilated to a 3. And my doctor was like, you're on bed rest now, like nothing, because her foot's right there. She goes, when she was examining, she goes, I can feel her foot, and I'm really worried that she's just gonna break your water and come early. That was during my 35th week. So Friday was day 1 of week 36, and I wake up that morning and Grace broke my water with her foot, and so she was breech. Now, when I got to the hospital, from my water breaking to delivery was right at 2 hours. And that was because she was coming and I was fully dilated. It was happening, and she was not positioned correctly in the breech and anything else to be delivered naturally, plus with some other issues. So we went ahead and did a C-section. So for me, there was a slightly increased cost between a normal vaginal birth and then going to a C-section towards my OB. But I had met my deductible, and it really didn't end up costing me anything different. I give you that as background for why mine got a little more expensive. So, number one, when you have an OB, you're paying them throughout the pregnancy for the birth. Now, as a first-time mom, I was like, cool, like I'm paying for the birth, but this seems like a really, everyone talks about it being so expensive. That seems like a really low amount. Well, what you're paying is just for your OBGYN to be there for the delivery. You're just paying for their part of the delivery, nothing else. So if you're delivering in a hospital, that's not the hospital fees for being in the room and for however many days, which is usually 2 to 3 days that you and or baby are going to be in the hospital room. So you're paying your OBGYN already, but one of the first costs is if you're giving birth in a hospital, you're going to have to pay the hospital as well for your stay. And the second one is if you choose to have an epidural or any type of anesthetic to help with the pain during delivery, you'll have to pay the anesthesiologist separately. Just because the anesthesiologist is at the hospital where you are does not mean that they're going to be covered in your network. And they may not have the hospital may not have another option for you to go to that is in your network. So ask those questions ahead of time, so if you are still having to do that you know roughly what it's going to cost. So paying off the normal birth was, I want to say $1,500. The anesthesiologist was like $1,600. And that was after I had already paid off everything, and that was with my insurance paying. Then the other thing you have to be aware of is there's going to be a pediatrician, just a pediatrician from the hospital that's going to be there, and their job is to check over your child and make sure everything's okay and give them, yes, they're born and they're breathing and everything's good. And you have to pay them. So that was another $500. Now, Grace was a month early. The hospital that I gave birth at did not have a NICU, which is a neonatal intensive care unit. So She had to get put on a care flight ambulance and taken to a bigger hospital where she stayed, and she was in the hospital for 10 days. The pediatrician was only like $500, and then care flight, I want to say, was like $6,000? No. I have to look back over. I mean, it was a lot. I was not expecting it at all to be that high. So we had that because she couldn't breathe, so she had to have a CPAP machine, which is a machine that covers this whole area, and it pushes air in so that the baby gets enough oxygen. She just wasn't quite breathing on her own the way she needed to be breathing on her own to be okay. And then by the time I saw her, she was no longer on the CPAP. She was just on the oxygen tube. But from the day she was born to the day we took her home, it was 10 days. So she was in the NICU for essentially 10 days. Preliminary notice paperwork, which you get, like, this is what we think it will cost you, and we're still working with your insurance, and you get, like, here is your actual bill. The preliminary said $50,000 for the 10-day stay and all the care it took in the NICU. So obviously not all babies are premature, and not all babies need to be in an NICU or a NICU. But those were costs that we didn't expect. Now, my husband and I know, because of the complications that I had this time, statistically, I'm going to have those complications with any subsequent pregnancy, and I may not be able to have as many children as I want to have because of the complications. We had the added cost of needing special care for our daughter for an extended period of time, and compared to a lot of people whose babies are in the NICU, 10 days is nothing. Are there horrible things that can come out of giving birth? Yes, of course. But the basic, we're assuming things go right. You have to pay your OBGYN or your doula or your midwife or whomever is performing the delivery. You have to pay, if it's in a hospital, you have to pay the hospital for your stay and for anything that they use. So any medications you're on, anything that they're giving you, you have to pay for. If you use any sort of pain medication and numbing stuff, you have to pay the anesthesiologist. If you have a C-section, you have to pay more because you're using the operating room and all those tools, and you have extra people. You have to pay the pediatrician who looks over your child. And if your child has to get special care, like we had to pay 2 different groups of pediatricians, because we paid the pediatrician at the first hospital, and then we had to pay the pediatricians that watched over her at the NICU at the second hospital. So we had 2 different pediatric bills just for watching her in the first 10 days of her life. And that added up. What we did pay last year was almost $12,000 just in the prenatal appointments, because I did have to go see a specialist. The last 6 weeks or so of my pregnancy, I was seeing a doctor 3 times a week. So when people say having a baby is expensive, they're not even talking about once you have them and they're home. They're talking about just the actual delivery cost from when I first got billed for all of my prenatal visits. So all the prenatal visits, all the specialty stuff, all the sonograms, all the NSTs, the actual birth, all of the special care that Grace needed, all of that is what I'm talking about. And going in naive like I did, and I think a lot of first-time parents do, I was like, oh, well, it's only like $1,500 for my OB, that's it, and the prenatal appointments. And it's so not. It can be so much more. Do I regret it? Would I go back and not have her? No. Oh my goodness, no. I love having her, and we're just going to be paying her off. Just be aware, plan for it, understand that you may be paying a car payment every month towards medical bills. So if you're looking at it going, oh, well, we can afford $500 for a car payment, you might need to have that $500 towards a medical bill every month, not towards a brand new car payment. So when people say having a baby can be expensive or is expensive, that's what they mean. Now, if she didn't have to go to the NICU, if she wasn't a preemie, it would have cost us substantially less. We would have walked out in under 10 grand for everything. I hope you found this helpful. I hope this answered some questions that you may have not known you had as a first-time parent. I know I didn't know this, and now that I know this, it just lets us better prepare for our next child. If you like it, like it. If you didn't like it, don't like it. Comment, post, share, and as always, please hit subscribe.